Admiral Zex Thran stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. His 4 eyes studied the holographic display showing the small blue planet that hung in space before him. Earth, the locals called it. Another backward world that would soon bow before the might of the galactic hegemony. The Admiral's scaled hands moved across the control panel as he reviewed the intelligence reports. The humans were pathetic. They had barely learned to leave their own planet. Their largest ships were nothing more than metal tubes filled with explosive chemicals. They used these primitive rockets to reach their single moon, and even that took them days of travel. Commander Vextar, what is the status of our fleet? Zex Thran asked, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered dozens of worlds. Sir, all 9,900 vessels are in position around the system, the younger officer replied. The humans have detected our presence but show no signs of preparing for battle. Their military vessels are still docked at their orbital stations. Zex Thran clicked his mandibles in amusement. Every species reacted the same way when they first saw the hegemony fleet. Terror, followed by desperate attempts at diplomacy, then finally submission. The humans would be no different. The fleet stretched across space like a metal storm cloud. Each ship was over 2 kilometers long, armed with plasma cannons that could melt mountains and protected by energy shields that could stop any attack. The hegemony had perfected warfare over 1,000 years ago. No enemy had ever stood against them for more than a few days. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the planet, Communications Officer Klexini announced. Put it through, Zex Thran ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. She had short brown hair and dark eyes that stared directly at the camera. Her expression was calm, almost bored. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force, the human said in clear, simple words. You are trespassing in our solar system. Turn around and leave now or face the consequences. The bridge erupted in clicking laughter. Several officers had to hold on to their control stations as they shook with mirth. A species that could barely reach their own moon was threatening the greatest military force in the galaxy. This is amusing, Zex Thran said, wiping moisture from his eyes. Commander Vexitar, how many ships should we send to deal with this threat? Vexitar checked his tactical display. Sir, our standard protocol calls for a 10-to-1 advantage. The humans have approximately 100 military vessels in orbit. We should send 1,000 ships. 1,000 ships to deal with 100 primitive rockets? Zex Thran shook his head. That seems excessive even for us, but protocol is protocol. Signal the first attack fleet to move into position. On the display, 1,000 hegemony vessels began moving toward Earth. Their dark hulls reflected the light of the system's star as they arranged themselves into the classic attack formation that had broken the defenses of countless worlds. Zex Thran opened a channel to broadcast his message to the human planet. This was always his favorite part of any conquest. The moment when the enemy realized how hopeless their situation truly was. People of Earth, he began, his voice carrying across space to every receiver on the planet. I am Admiral Zex Thran of the Galactic Hegemony. You have been selected for integration into our empire. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will make your world burn for 1,000 years. He waited for the usual response. Panic, desperate pleas for mercy, offers of tribute and submission. Instead, the human Admiral Chen appeared on screen again. Admiral Zex Thran, she said, pronouncing his name perfectly. Thank you for identifying yourself. We have been waiting for you for a very long time. Waiting for them? Zex Thran felt a strange sensation in his stomach. No species had ever said they were waiting for the hegemony. Every conquest had been a surprise attack that caught the target civilization unprepared. What do you mean, waiting? He asked. Admiral Chen smiled, and something about that expression made Zex Thran uncomfortable. We know who you are. We know what you do to other worlds. We know how many ships you have and what weapons they carry. We have been watching you for almost a century. Impossible, Vextar whispered. Our technology is far beyond theirs. They cannot detect our scouts or Intercept our communications. Chen seemed to hear him despite the distance between their ships. Commander Vextar, isn't it? We know about you too. We know about your victory at Kepler 442b 15 years ago. We know about your promotion after the siege of Wolf 359. We know a great deal about all of you. The bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at the screen in shock. How could these primitives know such specific details about hegemony military operations? You see, Admiral, Chen continued, you made a mistake when you decided to conquer this system. You assumed we were weak because our technology looks primitive. You assumed we were divided because we appear to fight among ourselves. You assumed we were unprepared because we seem to ignore the galaxy around us. Those assumptions are correct, Zexothran said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Your species has not even colonized its own system. You fight with chemical, explosives and metal projectiles. You are centuries behind our technology. Are we? Chen asked. Tell me, Admiral, what do you see when you look at our orbital stations? Zexthran glanced at his tactical display. The human stations appeared to be simple metal structures designed for basic manufacturing and communication, nothing that could threaten his fleet. I see primitive construction, he said. Crude metalwork that would not survive a single hit from our weapons. Look more carefully, Chen suggested. Something in her tone made Zexthran study the display again. The stations were arranged in a pattern around Earth. At first it seemed random, but as he traced the positions, he began to see something that made his blood run cold. The stations formed a defensive grid. Each one was positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire around the planet. What he had dismissed as communication arrays suddenly looked like they might be weapon mounts. The docking bays he had seen were large enough to hide significant military assets. This changes nothing, Zexthran said, but he could hear the uncertainty in his own voice. Our shields will protect us from any weapons you might have hidden. Our plasma cannons will reduce your stations to atoms. Will they? Chen asked. Admiral, you have conquered many worlds, but you have never fought humans before. We are not like the other species you have faced. We learn from every battle. We adapt to every enemy. And we never, ever give up. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in absolute silence. Zexothran stared at the empty screen, trying to understand what had just happened. In all his years of conquest, no enemy had ever spoken to him with such confidence. Sir, Vextar said quietly, perhaps we should call for reinforcements before we attack. Reinforcements? Zexthran turned to face his second-in-command. We have 1,000 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy against 100 primitive vessels. What could these humans possibly do to threaten us? He would find out very soon. Admiral Zexthran watched his attack fleet move toward Earth. 1,000 ships advancing in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of the human sun. It was a sight that had brought terror to hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. First, wave approaching optimal firing range, Commander Vextar reported. 200 ships are moving into attack position. Signal them to begin the bombardment, Zexthran ordered. Target their orbital stations first. Once those are destroyed, we will deal with any ships that try to escape. On the tactical display, the first 200 hegemony vessels formed into attack lines. Their plasma cannons began charging, energy readings climbing toward full power. In moments, the primitive human stations would be nothing but glowing debris. Sir, the sensor officer called out, I am detecting movement from the human installations. Zexothran looked at his screen. The orbital stations that had appeared motionless were now slowly rotating. Panels that he had thought were communication arrays were opening like metal flowers. Inside each opening, he could see something that made his stomach drop. Those are weapon ports, Vextar whispered. The stations were not just rotating. They were transforming. Metal sections slid apart to reveal hidden compartments. What had looked like simple communication towers extended into long barrel shapes. The entire orbital grid was changing from a collection of peaceful structures into a network of armed fortresses. Sir, energy readings are spiking. the sensor officer announced. Multiple contacts moving behind the moon. The dark side of Earth's moon suddenly blazed with light. Massive doors opened in what Zexthron had thought was bare rock. Ships emerged, from hidden bases carved deep into the lunar surface. These were not the primitive rockets they had seen in intelligence reports. These vessels were sleek, angular, and moving faster than anything should move. How many ships? Zexthron demanded. Unknown. Sir, they are using some kind of stealth technology. Our sensors cannot get accurate counts. More contacts appeared on the display. The asteroid belt, which had seemed empty except for floating rocks, was suddenly full of moving objects. What the hegemony had dismissed as space debris was revealing itself to be camouflaged military assets. Sir, the human admiral is transmitting again, the communications officer announced. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen. She was standing in what was clearly a military command center. Behind her, dozens of humans worked at control stations, their movements calm and efficient. Admiral Zexthron, she said, I told you we have been waiting for you. Did you really think we would sit defenseless while you approached our world? Your tricks will not save you, Zexthron replied, but his voice shook slightly. Our shields will protect us from any weapons you have managed to build. Will they? Chen asked. She turned to someone off-screen. Commander Rodriguez, you may begin the demonstration. The first shots came from the lunar bases. They were not the bright plasma bolts that hegemony ships used. Instead, they were invisible except for the trails of disturbed space they left behind. The projectiles moved at speeds that should have been impossible for any solid object. The lead hegemony ship, the destroyer Void Render, took the first hit. The relativistic projectile punched through its shields as if they were not there. The ship's hull cracked open like an egg, spilling atmosphere and debris into space. Shields are ineffective against kinetic weapons at that velocity, Vextar reported in shock. The projectiles are moving at 30% of light speed. More shots followed. The humans were not firing randomly. Each shot was precisely aimed at weak points in hegemony ship design. Engine sections, shield generators, weapon systems. The humans knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage. How do they know our ship design so well? Zexthron demanded. His answer came in the form of small objects launching from the orbital stations. At first, they looked like escape pods or communication probes. Then they began moving with purpose, swarming toward the hegemony fleet like angry insects. Fighter craft, Vextar identified. But they are so small, our targeting systems cannot lock onto them. The human fighters moved unlike anything Zexthron had ever seen. They did not fly in straight lines or predictable patterns. Instead, they twisted and turned through space as if they were dancing. When they fired their weapons, the shots were perfectly accurate despite their wild movements. Sir, we are receiving technical data transmissions from the human vessels, the communications officer reported. What kind of data? Detailed specifications of our ship systems, sir. Hull composition, shield frequencies, weapon capabilities. They know everything about our technology. Admiral Chen's voice came over the speakers again. We have been studying you for 93 years, Admiral. Every ship you have built, every weapon you have designed, every tactic you have used. We know your strengths and your weaknesses better than you do. The human fighters reached the hegemony formation, and chaos erupted. The small craft moved between the larger ships, firing precisely targeted shots that disabled key systems. When the hegemony vessels tried to return fire, their massive weapons could not track targets that moved so quickly and unpredictably. Sir, the crushing maw is reporting total engine failure, Vextar announced. The humans have somehow disabled their power core without destroying the ship. How is that possible? They are using some kind of electromagnetic pulse weapon, but it is specifically tuned to our technology. It only affects hegemony systems. On the display, Zexthron watched his proud fleet being torn apart by an enemy that should not have existed. The humans fought with precision that spoke of years of preparation. Every attack was calculated. Every movement had purpose. Sir, the destroyer Storm of Vengeance is requesting permission to use forbidden weapons, the communications officer reported. Zexthron hesitated. The forbidden weapons were planet killers, designed to destroy entire worlds when standard conquest was impossible. But using them would mean admitting that the hegemony could not defeat a primitive species in normal combat. Admiral, Chen's voice interrupted his thoughts. I know what you are considering. We know about your forbidden weapons too. If you use them, Earth will be destroyed. But so will your entire fleet. We have our own surprises waiting. You are bluffing, Zexthran said. Am I? Tell me, Admiral, how many ships have you lost in the last 10 minutes? Zexthran looked at his tactical display. The numbers were horrifying. 47 ships destroyed, another 68 disabled. The humans had not lost a single vessel. This is impossible, he whispered. No, Admiral. This is what happens when you underestimate humanity. We are not like the other species you have conquered. We do not surrender. We do not give up. We fight until we win or until we die. And today we are not planning to die. The human fighters regrouped and began another attack run. This time they were joined by larger vessels emerging from hidden positions throughout the solar system. Ships that looked nothing like the primitive rockets the hegemony had expected. Sir, Vextar said quietly, I recommend we withdraw the attack fleet and reassess the situation. Zexthran wanted to refuse. The galactic hegemony did not retreat from primitive worlds. But as he watched another of his ships explode under human fire, he realized that everything he thought he knew about this species was wrong. Signal the fleet, he ordered. Fall back to defensive positions. But as his ships tried to retreat, they discovered that the humans had been busy during the battle. The space around Earth was now filled with hidden minefields and weapon platforms. Every escape route was covered. The humans had not just been preparing to defend their world. They had been preparing to trap anyone foolish enough to attack it. Admiral. Chen appeared on screen one final time. Welcome to Earth, Admiral. I hope you are prepared for a long stay. 3 days had passed since the battle began, and Admiral Zexthran could barely recognize his once mighty fleet. What had started as 1,000 proud warships was now fewer than 300 battered survivors, trapped in a shrinking circle around Earth. Sir, the humans are broadcasting again, the communications officer announced with fear in his voice. Zexthran no longer looked forward to these transmissions. Each one brought worse news than the last, but he had to know what new nightmare the humans had prepared for him. Admiral Chen appeared on the screen, but she was not alone this time. Behind her stood other humans in different uniforms, scientists, engineers, tacticians, all of them studying data displays that showed detailed information about hegemony ships. Good morning, Admiral, Chen said politely. I hope you slept well. We have been very busy while you rested. What do you want? Zexthran asked. His voice was hollow, drained of the confidence he had possessed just days before. We want to thank you, Chen replied. Your fleet has provided us with the most valuable combat data we have ever collected. Every shot you fire, every maneuver you attempt, every defensive measure you employ teaches us something new about your technology. Behind her, a human scientist held up a datapad. Admiral, we have now analyzed the shield frequencies of 47 different hegemony ship classes. We have mapped the weak points in your hull designs. We have identified the optimal angles for penetrating your armor. Another human stepped forward. We have also reverse-engineered your plasma cannon technology from the debris of destroyed ships. Our weapons are now calibrated to exploit the harmonic frequencies of your energy shields. Zexthran felt sick. The humans were not just defeating his fleet. They were studying it like scientists examining insects under a microscope. Every ship that fell gave them more knowledge to use against the survivors. Sir, Commander Vextar whispered, the humans are moving again. On the tactical display, new contacts appeared around the fleet, but these were not the same human ships they had been fighting. These vessels looked different, modified with technology that seemed familiar yet wrong. Are those our weapons? Vexthran asked in horror. Yes, sir, the sensor officer confirmed. The humans have somehow installed hegemony plasma cannons on their ships, but the energy signatures are wrong. They have modified them. The modified human ships opened fire, and Zexthron watched in disbelief as purple plasma bolts struck his vessels. But these were not ordinary plasma shots. They had been changed, improved, made more deadly than the original hegemony weapons. How is this possible? Vextar demanded. It takes our scientists years to develop new weapon systems. Admiral Chen heard the question through the open communication channel. Commander, your species thinks in terms of centuries and millennia. Humans think in terms of hours and days. When we need something, we build it. When something does not work, we fix it. When we find a better way, we change immediately. To prove her point, Chen gestured to her tactical display. Observe. On the screen, Zexthron watched human work crews swarming over a captured hegemony destroyer. They were cutting into the hull with tools that carved through advanced alloys like soft metal. Within minutes, they had removed an entire weapon system and were installing it on a human vessel. This is impossible, Zexthron muttered. That weapon system took our engineers 5 years to design and another 3 to install properly. Your engineers work slowly because they fear making mistakes, Chen explained. Our engineers work quickly because they learn from mistakes. Every failure teaches us how to succeed faster next time. The human ships pressed their attack with renewed fury. But this was not the chaotic battle of the first day. Now the humans moved with perfect coordination, each vessel playing its part in a larger plan that Zexthron could not understand. Sir, they are using our own tactical formations against us, Vextar reported. But they have modified them, made them better. It was true. The humans had studied every hegemony battle tactic and improved upon them. When Zexthron ordered his ships into the traditional diamond formation, the humans countered with a variation that turned the formation's strength into weakness. When he tried the spiral attack pattern, they responded with a modified version that trapped his ships in their own maneuver. They are not just copying us, Zexthron realized. They are perfecting us. The worst part was the psychological warfare. Human ships broadcast constant streams of data during combat, technical specifications of every hegemony vessel, detailed analysis of their weaknesses, even personal information about the crews. The humans seemed to know everything about their enemy, down to the names of individual officers. Sir, the cruiser Voidstalker is reporting that the humans are calling their captain by name, the communications officer announced. They know his service record, his family, even his favorite foods. Zexthron felt a chill run down his spine. How could the humans know such personal details about hegemony officers? Unless they had been watching and listening for much longer than anyone had suspected. Admiral Chen, he called out, how long have you been spying on us? Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Admiral, we have been intercepting your communications since before your grandfather was born. We know more about your empire than most of your own citizens do. She gestured to another display. We know about your supply lines, your manufacturing capabilities, your political structure. We know which planets are loyal and which ones hate your rule. We know where your fleets are stationed and what orders they have received. But that would require technology far beyond what your species possesses, Vexthron protested. Would it? Chen asked. Admiral, you have been looking at our technology with the eyes of a conqueror. You see only weapons and ships. But our greatest strength is not our guns or our armor. It is our ability to think, to plan, to see patterns that others miss. As if to demonstrate this point, human fighters began using a new tactic that Zexthron had never seen before. Instead of attacking directly, they positioned themselves near disabled hegemony ships and used them as shields. When the hegemony vessels tried to fire, they risked hitting their own damaged ships. They are using our disabled vessels against us, Vextar observed, forcing us to choose between firing at our own ships or allowing the humans to attack freely. But the humans were not finished. New contacts appeared on the sensor display emerging from the asteroid belt. These were not ships. They were asteroids themselves, but they were moving under power and heading directly for the hegemony fleet. Sir, those asteroids have been fitted with engines and guidance systems, the sensor officer reported. They are essentially massive kinetic weapons. How many? Zexthran asked, though he dreaded the answer. 237, sir. All of them large enough to destroy a capital ship on impact. Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge. Again, Admiral, we have spent 50 years preparing for this day. Every asteroid in our belt has been cataloged, analyzed, and equipped with propulsion systems. Every piece of space debris has been turned into a potential weapon. Every satellite orbiting our world can become a missile if needed. Zexthran looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. Fear, confusion, and despair stared back at him. These were veterans who had conquered dozens of worlds, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Sir, Vextar said quietly, perhaps we should consider contacting the main fleet for assistance. No, Zexthran replied firmly. If we call for help, it will be admitting that a primitive species defeated the pride of the hegemony. The political damage would be enormous. But even as he spoke, Zexthran knew that pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. His fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to anticipate his every move. The humans were not just winning the battle, they were teaching him that everything he thought he knew about warfare was wrong. Admiral, Chen said, her voice cutting through his thoughts, you have lost 637 ships in 3 days. At this rate, you will have no fleet left by the end of the week. I am prepared to discuss terms for your surrender. Surrender. The word hung in the air like a curse. No hegemony fleet had ever surrendered to a primitive species, but then again, no hegemony fleet had ever faced humans before. Zexthran closed his eyes and tried to think of a way to salvage this disaster, but with each passing hour, it became more clear that the humans had planned for every possibility. They were not just defending their world. They were conducting a careful, methodical destruction of everything he had brought against them. And, somehow, Zexthran suspected that the worst was yet to come. Admiral Zexthran sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display with empty eyes. His fleet of 1,000 ships had been reduced to just 53 survivors. The space around Earth was filled with the wreckage of hegemony vessels, their broken hulls serving as monuments to his failure. The humans had stopped attacking 2 hours ago. They simply surrounded the remaining ships and waited. Zexthran knew they could destroy his fleet whenever they chose. The question was why. They had not done so already. Sir, we are receiving a transmission, the communications officer announced. It is not from Admiral Chen this time. Put it through, Zexthran said wearily. The main screen showed a different human. This one was older, with gray hair and kind, eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a simple white coat instead of a military uniform. Admiral Zexthran, the man said with a slight smile. My name is Dr. Marcus Webb. I am the Director of Xenological Studies for the United Earth Defense Force. I believe it is time we had an honest conversation. What do you want to discuss? Zexthran asked. The truth, Dr. Webb replied simply. You are wondering how we knew you were coming. You are wondering how we prepared so well for your attack. You are wondering how a primitive species managed to defeat the mighty galactic hegemony. Dr. Webb gestured to someone off-screen and the display changed to show a star map. Red dots marked various systems throughout the galaxy. Zexthran recognized many of them as worlds the hegemony had conquered. We have been watching you for 93 years, Admiral, Dr. Webb continued. Our first detection of your empire came in 1932 by your calendar, when our radio telescopes picked up transmissions from your conquest of the Vegan system. Zexthran felt his blood turn cold. The Vegan conquest had been over 90 years ago. That would mean the humans had known about the hegemony since before most of his officers were born. That is impossible, he said. Your species had barely invented radio communication at that time. You could not have detected our signals across such distances. Could we not? Dr. Webb asked. Admiral, you have made the same mistake that many species make. You have confused technological advancement with intelligence. Our technology may appear primitive to you, but our minds are not. The display changed again, showing what appeared to be a massive radio telescope built into the crater of Earth's moon. The structure was clearly very old, its metal surfaces worn by decades of exposure to space. This is the Farside Array, Dr. Webb explained. We began construction in 1933, 1 year after we detected your empire. It is the most sensitive listening device ever built by any species. For 90 years it has been recording every transmission, every communication, every data burst sent by your empire. But your species was still fighting with primitive weapons 90 years ago, Vextar protested from behind Zexthron. You had not even achieved spaceflight. Dr. Webb nodded. That is correct, Commander. But you see, learning about your existence changed everything for humanity. Every war we fought, every weapon we developed, every technological advancement we made was focused on a single goal: preparing for the day when you would come to our world. The display showed archived footage of human conflicts from the past century. But now Zexathran could see details he had missed in the intelligence reports. The weapons being tested were not just for fighting other humans, they were designed to counter specific hegemony technologies. Your species studied us while fighting among yourselves? Zexthran asked in disbelief. We never fought among ourselves, Admiral, Dr. Webb corrected. What you observed was an elaborate training program that lasted for decades. Every conflict you detected was actually a war game designed to test new tactics and technologies. The entire human species has been united in preparing for your arrival since 1933. Zexathran felt the floor seem to shift beneath him. Everything he thought he knew about humanity was wrong. The primitive, divided species his intelligence reports had described was actually a carefully crafted illusion. The orbital installations you destroyed in your first attack were built specifically to be discovered and targeted, Dr. Webb continued. They contained outdated technology and false information about our capabilities. We wanted you to believe you were winning while we gathered data about your weapons and tactics. But we intercepted your communications, Vexthran said desperately. We heard your military leaders discussing their strategies. You heard what we wanted you to hear, Dr. Webb replied with a gentle smile. Every transmission you intercepted was carefully planned. Every piece of intelligence you gathered was designed to reinforce your belief that we were a primitive, divided species. The scientist gestured again, and the display showed footage of human factories. But these were not the simple manufacturing plants the hegemony had expected. They were massive automated complexes that stretched for kilometers underground, hidden beneath seemingly innocent surface buildings. While you were observing our surface installations, we were building the real infrastructure deep underground, Dr. Webb explained. Every major city on Earth sits above a military-industrial complex that has been preparing for this war for almost a century. This level of deception would require coordination across your entire species, Commander Vexitar said. No civilization has ever maintained such a secret for so long. No other civilization has ever faced the threat of the galactic hegemony, Dr. Webb replied. Admiral, we studied your conquest patterns very carefully. We analyzed every world you have taken, every species you have destroyed. We learned that you always attack primitive worlds that cannot defend themselves. You have never faced a prepared enemy. The display changed to show detailed files on dozens of hegemony officers, including Zexthran himself. Personal information, service records, psychological profiles. Everything was there. We know about your promotion after the conquest of Rigel 7, Dr. Webb said, looking directly at Zexthran. We know about your family on the hegemony homeworld. We know about your fear of failure and what it would mean for your career. Zexthran stared at the screen in shock. The humans knew details about his life that even his closest friends did not know. How? He whispered. Admiral, for 90 years we have been intercepting every communication sent by your empire. We know about your politics, your culture, your military structure. We know which worlds in your empire are happy and which ones are planning rebellion. We know where your fleets are stationed and what their orders are. Dr. Webb leaned forward slightly. We also know that you have 8,900 ships waiting at the edge of this system, believing they are here as a show of force. What they do not know is that we have been preparing surprises for them as well. You know about the main fleet? Zexthran asked in horror. Admiral, we have known about your invasion plans for 6 months. We detected your fleet movements long before you entered our system. Every ship in your empire is tracked by our deep space monitoring stations. The revelation hit Zexthran like a physical blow. The humans had not just prepared to defend against his attack fleet. They had prepared for the entire hegemony armada. "What do you want from us?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Webb's expression became serious. "We want you to deliver a message to your empire, Admiral. The age of hegemony expansion is over. Earth is under the protection of humanity, and we will not tolerate any further attacks on our world or our allies." "Allies?" Vexitar asked. "What allies?" The display showed star maps of systems throughout hegemony space. Many of the conquered worlds were highlighted in blue. "Commander, did you really think we spent 90 years just preparing to defend Earth?" Dr. Webb asked. "We have been in contact with the oppressed peoples of your empire for decades. Many of them have been waiting for someone strong enough to challenge hegemony rule." Zexthran realized with growing horror that the humans had not just prepared to defeat his fleet. They had prepared to destroy his entire empire. "Admiral," Dr. Webb said formally, "your remaining ships will be escorted to the edge of our system. You will return to your government with our message and with complete records of this battle. You will tell them that humanity is now taking an active interest in galactic affairs." "And if we refuse to carry your message?" Zexthran asked. Dr. Webb smiled, but it was not a kind expression. "Then you will not be leaving our system at all, Admiral. The choice is yours." As if to emphasize the point, human ships moved into position around the surviving hegemony vessels. Zexthran counted the escort force and felt his heart sink. The humans had more ships waiting in reserve than he had left in his entire fleet. The mighty galactic hegemony had been outthought, outfought, and completely outmaneuvered by a species they had dismissed as primitive. And now, Zexthran would have to return home and explain to his superiors how everything they believed about warfare had been proven wrong by creatures they considered barely evolved animals. The worst part was that he suspected this was only the beginning. 20 battered hegemony ships limped through space toward the edge of the solar system. Admiral Zexthran sat in his damaged command chair, staring at the empty space where his fleet used to be. Of the 1,000 proud vessels that had entered the system, only these few survivors remained. Behind them, Earth grew smaller in the distance, but Zexthran could still see the lights of human ships patrolling their space. The humans had let them go, but the message was clear. Earth was no longer an undefended world. It was a fortress, and humanity was ready for war. "Sir, we are receiving the final transmission from the human planet," the communications officer announced. Dr. Webb appeared on the main screen one last time. The scientist looked tired but satisfied, like someone who had just completed a very difficult job. "Admiral Zexthran," Dr. Webb began, "you are now carrying the most important message in galactic history. What you tell your government in the next few weeks will determine whether there will be peace or war between our species." Zexthran said nothing. What could he say? That he had led the greatest military disaster in hegemony history? That a primitive species had destroyed his fleet while barely trying? That everything the hegemony believed about warfare was wrong? "We are transmitting complete battle records to your ship," Dr. Webb continued. "Your government will be able to see exactly what happened here. They will see how easily we defeated your technology. They will see how thoroughly we understand your military capabilities." On his tactical display, Zexthran watched as massive data files were uploaded to his ship's computer. Detailed recordings of every battle, every weapon test, every tactical demonstration. The humans were giving his government a complete education in human military power. "We are also including intelligence reports on every world in your empire," Dr. Webb added. "Your leaders will discover that we know about the rebellions brewing on a dozen conquered planets. We know about the supply problems that plague your outer territories. We know about the political divisions within your own government." Zexthran felt sick. The humans were not just sending a military message. They were revealing that they understood the hegemony better than the hegemony understood itself. "Sir," Commander Vextar whispered, "they are including personal files on government officials, military commanders, even the ruling council itself. Dr. Webb seemed to hear the comment. Yes, Commander. Your government will learn that we have been watching them for nearly a century. We know their strengths and their weaknesses. We know who can be trusted and who cannot. The transmission paused for a moment, and Dr. Webb looked directly at the camera. When he spoke again, his voice was serious and formal. Admiral, you will tell your government that humanity makes this offer only once. The galactic hegemony will immediately cease all military expansion. You will begin withdrawing your forces from conquered worlds that wish to govern themselves. You will open diplomatic relations with Earth and accept human observers to monitor your compliance. And if we refuse? Zexathran asked, though he already feared the answer. Then you will discover what humanity is truly capable of when we stop defending and start attacking, Dr. Webb replied. Admiral, the fleet you brought here was a small taste of our capabilities. You have seen what we can do when we are prepared. Do not make us show you what we can do when we are angry. The display changed to show long-range sensor readings from the edge of human space. Zexathran's blood turned to ice as he saw what the sensors had detected. Ships, hundreds of them, all moving away from Earth toward different destinations throughout the galaxy. Human exploration fleets are already heading toward 12 different hegemony systems, Dr. Webb announced. We will be making contact with the oppressed peoples of your empire. We will be offering them an alternative to hegemony rule. You are declaring war on our entire civilization, Zexathran said in shock. No, Admiral. We are offering liberation to the peoples you have conquered. There is a difference. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Zexathran stared at the empty screen, trying to understand what had just happened. In the space of 1 week, humanity had gone from unknown primitives to the greatest threat the hegemony had ever faced. Sir, the sensor officer called out, we are detecting multiple contacts at the edge of the system. On the display, new ships appeared. These were not human vessels. They were sleek, advanced craft that moved with obvious purpose. As they drew closer, Zexathran could see that their hulls bore the markings of species he recognized. Former hegemony, subjects who had supposedly been pacified decades ago. Those are Andromedan ships, Vextar said in disbelief, and Rigelian vessels, and ships from a dozen other conquered worlds. How are they here? The answer came in the form of a transmission from the lead vessel. The face that appeared on screen belonged to Captain Veltar of the Andromedan Republic, a government that had been destroyed by the hegemony 50 years ago. Admiral Zexathran, Captain Veltar said, on behalf of the Free Worlds Alliance, I am here to escort you safely out of human space. We want to make sure you reach your destination and deliver your message without interference. The Free Worlds Alliance? Zexathran asked. That organization was destroyed decades ago. Was it? Captain Veltar smiled. Admiral, did you really think the humans were the only ones preparing for this day? Many worlds have been waiting for someone strong enough to challenge hegemony rule. Today that wait is over. As his ships limped toward the jump point that would take them home, Zexathran watched more and more vessels join the escort. Ships from species that were supposed to be loyal hegemony subjects. Worlds that had supposedly accepted their conquest and integration into the empire. Sir, the communications officer announced, we are receiving messages from 17 different species. They all want to make sure we deliver the human message to our government. Zexathran realized that the humans had done more than defeat his fleet. They had sparked a galactic revolution. All across hegemony space, conquered peoples were rising up, inspired by humanity's victory. 2 months later, Admiral Zexathran stood before the Hegemony High Council in the golden chambers of the Imperial capital. The most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in their crystal chairs, listening as he delivered his report. The humans knew we were coming, he said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. They had been preparing for our attack for almost a century. Everything we believed about their primitive nature was false. The council members shifted uncomfortably as he described the battle, the systematic destruction of his fleet, the revelation of human intelligence capabilities. The offer of terms that sounded more like a surrender demand. They want us to withdraw from conquered worlds, one council member said in shock. They want us to allow human observers into our territory. This is unacceptable. With respect, Zexthron replied, I do not think we have a choice. The humans demonstrated capabilities far beyond anything we possess, and they are not acting alone. Half the Empire is already in rebellion, inspired by their victory. The Council of Species spent hours debating the human ultimatum. Some members wanted to refuse and fight. Others argued for negotiation. A few suggested that perhaps it was time for the hegemony to change its ways. In the end, the decision was made by reports from across the Empire. Human ships had appeared in over 30 different systems, not as conquerors, but as liberators. Everywhere they went, hegemony subjects were joining them in rebellion. Sir, an aide announced, we have lost contact with the entire Outer Rim sector. Human and allied forces control 17 core worlds, and rebellion has spread to over 40 others. The greatest military empire in galactic history was crumbling, brought down by a species they had dismissed as primitive animals. The age of hegemony expansion was over, ended by creatures who had spent a century preparing for a single week of war. Admiral Zexthran was given a new assignment, Ambassador to Earth. His job was to negotiate the terms of hegemony surrender and the establishment of a new galactic order. As his ship approached the Sol system for the second time, Zexthran looked out at the blue world that had changed everything. Earth hung in space like a jewel, beautiful and peaceful. But now he knew the truth. Behind that peaceful appearance lay the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever known. Humanity had kept their promise. They had shown the galaxy what they were truly capable of when they stopped defending and started attacking. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The message had been delivered. The old order was dead. A new age was beginning, with humanity at its center.